What is up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Once again, it's been a while since I've done one. Work and life has just gotten kind of crazy to put these out weekly, and I'll get into a groove where I'll get one out every week, and that is far easier when I've got friends in town or I've just got people I can get on the podcast. These solo ones are pretty difficult. I've got to reach pretty deep to just gain the motivation to get in here and get everything on and kind of go over some notes about what I want to talk about, but also the execution of the episode. I feel like once I get in here, I am alone in here. I don't have a producer. I don't have anyone I'm talking with. And it's really quite difficult to kind of muster up conversation when you're just in a room alone with a camera. When you listen to it back, it's even when I listen to it back in post, it feels like I'm talking with people. But when I'm actually creating that conversation or that monologue, basically, it's super difficult. I feel like without editing, to just press record and talk for 45 minutes to an hour, which is right about what I've done in solo episodes, it's so hard. And once I hit record, I'm like, man, how long until I just hit a space, like a wall where it's just a blank space and I have no idea where to go from here. So that being said, these ones are difficult, but I know how important it is to just keep the wheels turning, to just keep it going out. I mean, I've never been more stoked on the studio setup. I'm so excited about this setup. I've got it framed a little different since I'm sitting here alone. There's really no point in trying to frame the whole booth setup here with no one else here. This is if you're watching on YouTube, obviously, and you can see the studio and see exactly where everything is framed. But the studio that I've put together here at the new house in Chattanooga, Tennessee, is one that I really wish I had back in New Hampshire. I mean, this diner, 180-degree booth with some stuff on the wall behind me is exactly what I was envisioning back about a year ago. And I still have yet to set up some more things in a more solid, kind of permanent way. The boom arms aren't where I want them. This isn't even the table that I really want. Some of you guys may remember I scooped this table up while Aiden Templin was in town, who was on the podcast recently. And I needed something. I was still setting up the studio and was scouring Facebook Marketplace the day that we were going to be recording. And we found this round table about 20 minutes from here, and it was cheap and we scooped it up. So because I've been so busy in the shop and elsewhere in my life, I have not gotten a table that best fits or suits this booth. So for now, this is what I'm working with. When I lean forward on the table, the boom arm kind of gets in frame of my face from the camera. But here we are. This, I almost didn't even press record on this. This is on a pretty busy day, but I wanted to get this done and recorded and out to you guys before the incoming storm of this week. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that as we get into the episode. But I guess as a recap, if you follow me on Instagram or you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you kind of know what's been going on in the last couple of months. It's probably been more than a month that I've recorded an episode of the podcast. I haven't even looked to see when the last one was recorded. I think it was when Corey was on, right after Alpine Volks Fair in Helen. So you guys know about the Auto Union project, the 1000 SP. That really hasn't gained any ground yet, simply because I've purchased a 2-post lift. That was a big time purchase for me. I mean, they don't give those things away even in the budget realm anymore. But I bought a bend pack lift, and bend packs are very well built lifts, and they're obviously not cheap either. But the one thing that drove me to a bend pack and not some budget lift is my overhead space here in the shop. I don't have 12-foot overhead space to my trusses. I only have about 11-foot 6. And I did not want a 2-post lift that had a crossover on the floor. And any of you guys that deal with low cars, you know why. It's really tough to get a low car up and over that crossover plate and then up onto the lift. And that gives you more lift to a lower rise height, I guess, inside your shop, because you don't have to worry about an overhead crossover for your hydraulic cylinder and cables and all of that. But the way this shop is set up, this 2-bay shop, the other bay that the lift is not going in has a big, deep drain. So the floor isn't flat, not at all. It's way deeper and more steep than it really needs to be. So That bay is simply for just parking a car in. So the one other bay that has a flat floor is where I only have flat space to work on a car there. So if I'm setting suspension up, or if I've got a low static car that's coming in the shop, all my own stuff basically. But like the W108 Mercedes I just finished, getting all the suspension sorted out and being able to air it down on the ground and see if it lays out flat or just fender to lip fitment or wheel fitment in general is best having just a flat floor space. So Benpack makes a Grand Prix series of lifts that have lower overhead height with overhead crossovers. And I think they're called the 7LCs. Mine's the 7LC. It's the GP7 or the GP7L. Since I have 11'6", this overhead bar is 10 foot. So they make one that's favorable for a 9-foot ceiling in someone's shop. So if you've got like a 2-car attached garage in your house, you can fit one of the 9-foot lifts in. So it's really, really cool that they make that. And they are a bit expensive, but I pulled the trigger. It's here. It's not installed yet. I've kind of been piecemealing the installation because I've been so busy, and I've never installed one myself. So I've kind of been reading the installation checklist thoroughly to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row. So as I start to kind of chip away at the installation, I'm kind of heading in the right direction and I can get it done by myself. So I think once it gets time to put the overhead bar up with the hydraulic cylinder, I'll probably have a few friends over, and I'll probably need a forklift rented and all that sort of stuff. So that being said, I've got the lift. That was a massive purchase for me. That I've never purchased anything big with credit. So anything I've ever owned, I've paid cash for. So, $5,000 out the door for a lift. And just before that, the same week I bought the lift, I bought a 24-foot open car trailer. And I know you guys have seen me using an open trailer in the past. I've always borrowed my father's open trailer before I moved here to Tennessee, but I had purchased a 24-foot enclosed trailer back in 2019. And so that was key living in New Hampshire to have a covered enclosed trailer, because in the winter I could park a car in there and have free covered storage for one of my cars. So that was a huge purchase for me. That was the first personal trailer I'd ever bought, and having an enclosed trailer growing up to me was like, man, you've got a race team. If you've got an enclosed car trailer, that's a power move. So buying that trailer was like kind of a dream come true in a way. And although that's been an awesome addition to the whole shop fleet, it's a steel trailer. It's a big enclosed trailer. It's a lot to just kind of pull that thing out to go potentially look at a car or potentially buy one, and it's just a heavy trailer to be hauling around. So a lot of the times when I'm going to rescue a friend who's broken down, or to go look at a car that, I don't care if it's inside a trailer or not, I really wanted an open trailer. It was going to make things so much easier. An open trailer that I could put a winch on. And I can't remember, I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast. I know I did an episode about it. And if you guys want to go back a few episodes, you'll be able to see the actual episode of me going to buy that trailer. But it's a 24-foot twin 3,500 pound axle trailer with a winch plate on it. And I do need to do some modifications to it. It's a Southern built trailer. And before I used to basically categorize those as cheap trailers, but today I think I paid a little more for that trailer than I paid for my enclosed trailer 3 years ago. So they're going up in price, but the undercarriage isn't even painted. It's just raw metal. So I got to get under there and paint the undercarriage. It's only got one axle with brakes, which I don't like at all. I'd rather have both axles with brakes. And so getting backing plates with brakes and drums and all that sort of stuff is going to be kind of expensive. So I want to do all that. It doesn't have a breakaway system for the brakes. I want to add that. I have bought a winch. You guys will probably see that in an upcoming episode, getting that mounted. Because what I want to do is I want to get that mounted and get the auto union pulled up onto the trailer, because the key to this whole thing, the reason why I bought a 24-foot open trailer, other than to just have the range of vehicles I can fit on that trailer, was that the 700 and the Auto Union 1000 will both fit on that trailer together. And that was the reason why I sought out a 24-foot open trailer, because you best believe that when that Auto Union's done, man, just the idea of seeing my OBS Ford hauling that trailer down the highway with a 1960 BMW 700 Sport Coupe bodied out, laid out on the trailer with a same year 1960 Auto Union 1000 body dropped laid out on the deck behind it is just kind of like a dream visual. Like to see those two cars on the same trailer going down the highway. So I think for the next episode I'll do involving that trailer is I'll install the winch. I've got to fabricate like a miniature headboard for the fair lead with the rollers for the cable, and then pull the Auto Union on and drive the 700 on, and kind of, so the cool part of the whole episode, rather than just watching me install a winch, will be to see both cars on the trailer at the end of that episode. So I kind of wanted to wait till the Auto Union was done to spoil myself and see those two cars on the trailer. But I really want to see the visual of the two of them on there, so I kind of know how they'll go on. Weight-wise, they're pretty light cars, so I don't think there's going to be an issue which one goes on first and which one goes on the back. So that's super exciting. Wanted to talk about that a little bit. Again, I purchased the trailer and the lift in the same week, and to see about 10 grand go out the door in 1 week was just a tough pill to swallow. When you're a sole proprietor, when you're self-employed and you're a one-man operation, it's a lot, and none of it went on credit. It's just the money out the door, and I own it, which is great. I'm not making payments on any of that. And it feels really cool to have that stuff here. The lift is honestly a dream. It really is a dream. To me, it's another like step in your automotive shop, basically, or your automotive tooling arsenal, I guess you could call it. I grew up in a shop, in my dad's shop, with a lift. And so I got kind of used to having one. I didn't really take advantage of it, but the last unit I was in, the landlord purchased a cheap lift and had it installed for me. So that didn't really have the same feeling, having spent the money for not just a lift, but a really expensive one or a good one, and install it yourself. So I'm in that process now. I think I'm just about ready to snap some chalk lines. I've got the posts upright, and I've got the Corvair pulled in, and I've kind of got them right about where I think I want it. And so I'm going to snap some lines, get the posts out of the way, and drill some holes here pretty soon in the concrete. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that'll be up. As far as other news, oh man, I haven't talked about this on YouTube yet, but I did make a post on Instagram. I bought a car in England, and I am going to make a YouTube episode about this. So I might not talk too much about it, but most of you guys that have come here follow me on Instagram, so you already know. I bought a one-owner, super low mileage, first year Mark III Golf in England. So it's a Euro spec, right-hand drive. It's a GL. It's nothing crazy. It's not a Color Concepts or a GTI, but it's got under 50,000 miles on it, and it's a one-owner car, and it is in incredible condition. Huge shout out to my friend Steve Paris from Wales, who went and took a look at the car for me and ultimately went and purchased it and drove it home. By the stars aligning, basically, the car was only about 4 miles from his house in Cardiff, or just outside Cardiff, Wales. And I'd found it on Facebook Marketplace. And the guy did not want a lot of money for this car. It was a great deal. And so I wired Steve the money, and we made it happen. And so that's been basically the precursor to my trip over there. As I'm recording this, in a few weeks, I'm going to be heading over there for the Roll Hard show. That's at a place called The Heritage. And I haven't been there in person yet, even though I've been over there a handful of times. But I'm really looking forward to attending their show for the first time. Dan and Johnny and a bunch of the Roll Hard guys are good friends of mine, and I've yet to attend one of their shows. So that was kind of on the list. There was too much craziness going around my life at the time of Players Classic, which is the show that I usually go over to England for. That's the beginning or mid-June. So I figured, well, August would be a great time to go over. I could make that happen. So I figured if I go over there, it'd be great to hopefully find a car and kind of create some content around that, maybe ship it back to the States. And so I don't know what's going to go on there yet, but I am looking forward to going over and having a car to kind of tinker on with Steve in his shop and putting around England throughout my time there. So Kayla and I are going to be going over the first week through the second week of August. So all of you UK friends, hopefully I will see you at Roll Hard at the Heritage. That is the second week of August. I wish I had those dates right in front of me. Actually, I'll look it up right now. It is August. They don't have it on their, oh, here it is. The 14th, August 14th. Going to be doing a LUDWICK'S Garage Meet, And I think we're going to be trying to integrate the Ludwig's Garage meet with their pre-meet the Saturday night before the show at the actual venue of the show. So that'll be awesome to kind of be a part of that whole pre-meet with Ludwig's Garage. So huge thanks to Dan and Johnny for wanting to include me in that. I'll be making some Roll Hard and Ludwig's Garage exclusive merchandise, probably some key rings because those are easy to travel with. They don't take up as much space as t-shirts or any sort of soft goods. But that's kind of the usual scenario for my trips over. I usually make some sort of limited edition exclusive keyring of some sort to bring over with me to sell to you guys. So we'll be making some Roll Hard, Ludwig's Garage keyring of some sort. So keep an eye out on the Instagram for that. I'll probably only make about 50, first come, first serve type deal. But super excited to tinker with the golf. As I said, I've never owned a Mark III Golf before. And so it's kind of cool to have a low mileage, a time capsule, almost showroom condition right-hand drive one. That'd be kind of cool. So whether or not that gets shipped back to the States, I don't know yet. I've already got my sights on something else, obviously. And I've been talking to a good friend of mine who lives in London, who's from the States, who lives there now, who really wants the car. So I don't know. I might putt around in it for my time over there and then maybe leave it with him before I fly home. We'll see what happens. But I think that might be it on news. Or getting caught up. Goodness, I wish I was doing these every week. I could have kind of talked more in depth about all these things. Went to Puerto Rico. Did do an episode here on the YouTube about that. Jay Martinez, who puts on Tuner Evolution, does a show in Puerto Rico. And this year, for the first time, it was a 2-day show. And he was kind of pulling my leg or just kind of working, chiseling away at me to try to get me to come down. And Kayla and I went down for about 4 days. We did end up going down for the show, but we went down a day and a half before the show and rented a car. And I had never been to Puerto Rico before, so I really wanted to see the whole island. I wanted to take advantage of being down there for a little bit of time before the show. We rented a car, and we did as much as we could cram into a full day. We arrived on the Thursday before the weekend of the show. We went and did Old San Juan, so we walked around the old village of San Juan, saw the old fort. We got amazing food there that Thursday night. Then Friday, got up real early at like 5 a.m. and just tried to cram in as much of the island as possible. So without going into too much detail, we headed to the East Coast first. We left San Juan and headed towards El Yunque rainforest, which is like the national rainforest there in Puerto Rico. That was incredible. The windy roads through the rainforest there is just unbelievable. And the vegetation and the history, that was really cool. So we filmed a lot of that and then headed back through San Juan, basically dipped down south of San Juan and headed to the West Coast towards Isabela, Aguadilla, and Aguada. We did those 3 areas there and everything in between those areas. But we saw the beaches, we saw the waterfalls, we saw these really cool caves in Isabela. Can't remember the name of the town that was right on the beach. There's this really cool, I think it was Pasadilla, something like that. And it was like this really cool cave system on the beach and nobody was there. We figured it would be packed. So that was really cool to cram that in. And then the show itself was unbelievable. The quality of cars in Puerto Rico, Rotaries, obviously, it's known as the Rotary capital of the world. That was nuts as well to see a lot of that stuff. A lot of the vintage cars, vintage stock body Datsuns and Mazdas with triple rotor 20Bs with ITBs or big turbos on them. Pretty mind-blowing quality and diversity of cars, a selection of cars on such a small little island that I'm sure is super difficult to import stuff to, both cars or parts. I'm sure the infrastructure is much smaller and more difficult to build your cars. And I mean, it's just incredible the resolve that these people have to build cars in an environment like that. So huge thanks to Jay for getting us down for that. He helped out, had me on stage for a little bit talking about what I do, which is always kind of weird, but I got a chance to meet Big Mike. We had a blast. Big Mike is the host of the shows. So we had a great time hanging out, getting to know each other over the weekend and chatting for a bit on stage there. So I guess on the same wavelength as Tuner Evolution, as I speak, in about another week and a half, I'm going to be making the 12-hour haul up north to Philadelphia for Tuner Evo Philly. And I'm making the awards for that show, which I made the awards for the Puerto Rico show and the SoCal show before it. I'm making the show awards for Philly, and then I think Chicago, Houston, Miami. I'm basically making the awards for the entire 2022 tour of Tuner Evo, and they're kind of involved. They take quite a bit of work. So starting tomorrow, as I record this, we'll be taking the entire week to build the awards for that show. And again, Jay has kind of chiseled away at me to get me to come up to Tuner Evo Philly. I'm going to be bringing the BMW 700 in the enclosed trailer with my entire booth setup. So I will be vending Tuner Evo Philly as Ludwig's Garage and have the BMW 700 there. So I'm kind of in the process of pulling my enclosed trailer out and kind of getting my OBS Ford warmed up to hauling that thing. Just this morning, I took it up the highway and kind of ran it around town for a bit to just kind of see how it felt, because I haven't really hauled that trailer with that truck yet. So in another week and a half, both Kayla and my buddy Mason Gavin from Riverside here in Chattanooga are going to be making the haul up together in that truck, hauling my trailer. So Mason's going to be vending with Riverside as well, but not bringing a booth car. And he was going to be renting a van to get up there. So it all worked out. He was already planning on going up. I said, hey, Jay kind of convinced me to come up there. And so Mason's hauling up with us. The OBS is an extended cab, so I think we'll have plenty of space heading up there. It's about 12 hours up and 12 hours back. So keep your fingers crossed that the OBS does well hauling this trailer that far. We hauled Mason's open aluminum trailer with the 700 on it about the same distance south to Eurotripper this past February. We did the 700 for Eurotripper about 12 hours south and 12 hours back. So no problems there. This episode is brought to you by Wheel Price, a wheel classifieds app designed by automotive enthusiasts. Wheel Price is the most convenient way to buy, sell, and trade your wheels. They make it real easy to search for the wheels that you're looking for through brand, model, diameter, PCD, and overall specs. You can communicate with sellers right from inside the app, as well as purchase wheels from inside the app. This app is free. Wheel Price is free. There's a link in the video's description and the podcast description for iOS and Android devices. Download it right to your device and get listing your wheels today. I wanted to make sure I asked some Q&As from you guys on Instagram just this morning. Got a handful of questions in because I knew I was probably going to leave a bunch of stuff on the table that I forgot to talk about here. I just decided this morning to record this, so I was pretty scarce on my notes. If I look at my notes again here real quick. Yeah, I've kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about. Wanted to give a huge shout out to all of you guys that have signed on to the Patreon. I wanted to start this episode with that because that I feel like takes priority after the long road of soul searching about starting a Patreon and whether or not I was worth the value of people's money, to like start a subscription-based platform like that. The handful of you guys that have come on there and have been super supportive is flooring to me. It's absolutely floored me. So I just wanted to thank you guys personally. I want to do more. I want to figure out how to chat with you guys more on there, whether or not it's a Patreon-based podcast, if it's just a short one. I don't want to rob people who don't want to be a part of the Patreon of the podcast. I know that I'd probably work harder on this podcast if it was just for the Patreon users, but I know that it's definitely valuable to have this as a public platform as well. And unfortunately, they don't make enough hours in the day, and I don't know if I'd be able to juggle a full podcast once a week and then another half podcast or so for just the Patreon. But I have been talking about like all of these things that I'm doing well in advance to you guys on the Patreon. You guys knew about the lift, about the 2-car trailer, about the golf in England, about the Mercedes before I bought that, the auto union. I'm kind of throwing all those teasers out well before I post anything about it publicly. So thank you guys. It means so much to me. Every penny that comes through that Patreon is going into this whole thing, the YouTube, the shop, the projects, the builds, the podcast here. I just bought some new gear for the podcast that I'm still in the process of setting up. That's all directly from the Patreon and what the YouTube kind of helps bring in. So do not want to glaze over that. I thank you guys so much for that. So I think basically I'll get into some Q&As. This will be a short episode. I was hoping to do 45 minutes to an hour, and that was going to be about it, but wanted to get one out. So let's go to some Q&As here. Let's see. All right. These are some short ones here. My friend Taylor Parnell, Mr. Mr. Parnell with 2 L's. Taylor's a really good friend of mine from years ago. We played music together from about 2005 to 2009. Phenomenally talented musician. Taylor, if you're listening to this, man, we need to figure out how to write and record music 3,000 miles apart. Taylor and I are both from New Hampshire. We were in a band together. Well, he was in a band called Call Her Alaska. That was his band. And my band was How Near, How Far. And we played shows together for years and always loved each other's music, the way we wrote. I mean, I'm basically saying I love the way he wrote. And finally, we got together and started a band. And that band was called Galleries. And it was kind of like a Moving Mountains, Explosions in the Sky, Lydia, indie rock band, vocalizing harmonies, or harmonizing vocals, I should say. Him and I are both singers. We both play guitar, lots of delay and lots of kind of like big sounding ambient kind of tones to the music. And the band never got off the ground. We had a lot of inner band headbutting with some of the other members. I was riding BMX full time at the time. And so right around the time that we were kind of getting ready to play shows, we had about a full set written. Some stuff hit the fan and we disbanded, and I moved to Florida, and Taylor ended up moving out west to California. So as a precursor to his question, Taylor and I have a big music history, and to this day, we still talk about not wasting our well-mixed skill set of music. I mean, I'm my own worst critic when it comes to music, but when we wrote together, we just really enjoyed our time writing music together. So hopefully someday soon we will be able to put something out. So actually his question is, when are you releasing more music? And I'm really happy that he sends me messages and texts pretty frequently. I'd say at least once a month, if not a few times a month, basically sending me a screenshot that he was listening to some of my old music, or something about a song that we were working on together that we never recorded, or simply a song that he put out. And if you check him out, I'm pretty sure his Instagram, his music Instagram is Taylor Parnell. It's Taylor Andrew Parnell. That's his music page. And if you like indie rock music, please go listen to some of his original and covers. He did a Cursive cover that still blows my mind. But to answer your question, Taylor, man, I'm hoping soon. The intonation is all off on my Telecaster, and right now that was the last electric guitar that I was recording with. And since the intonation's off, you can't tune it well. I think the neck is warped, and I've just been super lazy to get that fixed because I told myself that was my opportunity to buy a new guitar. I play Fender guitars and Fender amps pretty exclusively, and I've wanted to buy a white on white or a white on mother of pearl pickguard Jazzmaster. And they're a couple grand, brand new. They're a couple grand buying like a vintage one. So I've kind of tried to allocate a few $1,000s to buy one, and things just kept coming in the way of that. Getting the unit in New Hampshire before I moved down here, and then the move here itself, and then more and more investments into the business, into this whole deal. So I keep putting it off, basically. And it kills me because a lot of the music you guys hear here on the YouTube channel is my music. The synthwave part that you hear at the beginning and the end of this actual episode, I wrote. And then a lot of the indie rock, like instrumental parts you hear in the YouTube episodes, the vlogs, I write myself as well. But I'm just regurgitating old music that I recorded years ago because I haven't been able to write and record new stuff. So Taylor, thank you so much for being an ever-present motivation or motivational tool or avenue for wanting to stay active with music. It is my first passion, even though I basically grew up in a garage. Music is like more of a therapy outlet for me than cars are, because I don't really enjoy the journey with the cars as much as I really want to. I enjoy the end result, and the end result is that much more sweet when you've gone through that journey yourself. But I'm learning to love the journey more. With the music, if I've got the time and I'm not stressed out about anything else in my life that's time pressing as far as work because I'm self-employed, the music process is therapy all the way through. I love starting with nothing and getting a certain guitar tone and then composition and writing and then recording and adding layers and levels. And it's just in recording drums, because I play drums too. I'll sequence in a lot of electronic like strings and make things sound much bigger than just me. So I really enjoy that process. And in a perfect world, I'd have my studio all set up, which it's like half set up. I've lived here for almost a year now, and I've not touched any of my instruments except for my acoustic guitar. So I'm hoping soon. I really want to pull the trigger on a new guitar and justify it. All my big purchases lately have been purchases that will ultimately help me make more money. So I haven't really quite been able to justify the music purchases yet. So that being said, yeah, thank you for all the motivation. My music page is a perfect time to plug my music page, is The Rising Sea. That's a music project that I started as a solo project in 2009 when I moved to Florida, and actually started writing music. A lot of the music you guys hear in the YouTube vlogs are pieces that I recorded in 2009. So they're 12, 13 years old now. And I'd love to take the time to sit down and write more music specifically for the YouTube. It takes so much time. And I know a lot of people that just watch the YouTube vlogs don't realize that, but everything's me. And that's not to be like, pay more attention to me. Guys grind so much harder than I do at YouTube. I totally know that. When I see guys like Jimmy Oaks, Jimmy's basically more, he posts more about it on Instagram stories than like Tommy and some of the other guys that I know personally from the Northeast. But like Jimmy's always editing at like 2 a.m. And obviously I know he's got a few friends that are in the shop with him, but luckily his YouTube channel's been able to grow large enough to where he can pay those guys, to be like, hey, work for me full time and take the load off of merchandise design, merchandise order fulfillment, or advertisement, help out in the shop, actually guys helping him in the shop, tangibly on the cars. But like editing himself at 2 a.m. every night is something that I'm experiencing. And to add another layer of writing and recording my own music for the YouTube channel is another mega stressful avenue of that. So I'd love to be able to figure out get to be like a well-oiled machine in this, and maybe with hard work, with the hardest work, get to the point where the YouTube is making enough to where I can justify paying somebody to help me film so I can focus on the work. And maybe even if I still edit at the end, but to help, maybe somebody to help produce here with the podcast. I keep thinking about all that stuff, but I realize I need to be putting the content out first, because it won't ever come back to me if I'm not putting it out there. So this, I feel like, is the hardest you work when you're alone and you're trying to get it up off the ground. So I'm trying to stay very motivated on this whole thing, and music is very much a part of that. So Taylor, I'm hoping soon, maybe one day, we are writing music together for the YouTube channel, but also for our own YouTube channel. And maybe we document what it's like to remotely write music together from the East Coast and the West Coast. Taylor has a family, he's got kids, and I've got a lot that I'm juggling here. So it'd be really cool to like kind of maybe document the ins and outs and the hurdles involved in writing, basically starting a music project remotely like that. So we shall see. Juhis, Juhi, and like 5 S's, asks, have you booked your trip to Finland yet? I have not, but I've got some friends in Finland and I want to come there so bad. I have not traveled to Finland yet. That is on the list for sure. I'd like to make it happen, hopefully in the next couple of years. So would love to come see your country and visit you as well. Let's see, Notch Jack, my buddy Jack from England. He says, would you ever do a lifted build? I know you love Mason's rig. If so, what would it be? Yeah, I've wanted to do a 4-wheel drive rig for a while now. Being from New Hampshire, I'm from the woods basically, so I've always loved 4-wheel drive trucks. Never built one. I've had a few, but they've remained basically bone stock. I love weird stuff. I mean, it's the same with all the cars. I like the weird stuff. If I was going to build something off-road, and I've talked about this before, the two that come to mind first, and I get jazzed up about this because it makes me want to build one sooner than later. basically the two rigs I want to build that are really weird, off the beaten path four-wheel drive rigs are a Lada Niva, which is a Russian car. That's their four-wheel drive rig. But not just a Lada Niva. I want to do a first gen, like an early model one, like a pre-export Soviet Lada Niva. And that's much like my 2101 Lada that I had. That was in 1972 and pre-75. Basically from 1970 to 1975, they weren't exported into Western Europe. So it was a Soviet like Iron Curtain car only, Eastern Bloc. And so all the instrumentation was all in Russian. All the badging was in Russian. There was no English anywhere on the car. It was actually before they were known as Lada. They were called Zhiguli. And when they started exporting those cars into Western Germany, but shipping them into Western Europe and then ultimately on to like Cuba and Canada, they became known as Lada. And there was English instrumentation and more English wordage involved in those cars. So I'd really like to find, and it's really hard to do so because you got to go to Eastern Europe, into the back streets of Eastern Europe. I'd like to find a Russian pre-export Lada Niva. The next one, very similar in shape and size, is a Fiat Panda 1. And that's a little hatchback car as well. I guess to basically describe the Niva, it's like a hatchback four-door Golf, basically, in its overall shape. And so is the Fiat Panda. The Fiat Pandas are all over Italy. When I was in Italy, I saw those things everywhere. And once I saw that they made 4x4 ones, I was really jazzed up on that car too. So those are the two that are kind of at the top of the list. But unfortunately, it's not a car where I can just all of a sudden decide I want to do a four-wheel drive build and I want to start it in the next month. Like, let's go buy one. So that's something that I would like to source in Europe, maybe involve some friends, kind of like this Mark III Golf that I just purchased, involve, like my buddy Steve who helped me go look at it. I'll go over there myself and have my hands on it and kind of film some content of it and then ship it back here stateside and then build it here. And that's kind of what I really want to do. And so I guess a lot of things being spur of the moment are difficult when you want to, kind of like import a car and source it in another country. And there's a lot of logistics involved. You got to be a bit more methodical about it. That's what comes to mind first. I guess if I were to free up some funds and kind of whip something up that I could find down here in the South of America, would probably be something like a short wheelbase Mitsubishi Raider or Montero. I guess it'd technically be a Dodge Raider, but like a short wheelbase Raider, two-door, or maybe even a long wheelbase Montero, a first-gen Montero. I really like the first-gen Isuzu Troopers. I know these are like all kind of quirky, mechanically inclined cars that kind of have issues here and there, but I like boxy, weird rigs that you don't normally see on the trail. Like, I'm not really that interested in doing a Jeep or a Toyota. It'd be cool to do like a weird Land Cruiser, like a Japanese imported Land Cruiser or something. But basically a Niva or a Fiat Panda. If I don't end up finding a four-wheel drive Panda, I'd love to do just a Fiat Panda 1 as like a car to slam on cool wheels and just cruise around on the streets. All right, let's see. Boy, I don't know. Here we go. I'm kind of reading through these now. Joe Manolakis says, favorite car you've ever seen on bags. Man, favorite car I've ever seen on bags is definitely along the same lines of something weird and different. I'm trying to think of the last time I saw something that blew my mind in person. It would definitely be something weird. Something off the beaten path. I don't know. Bags, my friend Mike Unland from Fort Myers, Florida, has done a couple Renault Dauphins on Beetle Pans, but they weren't on bags. They were just static, and they were bellied out. So that was really cool to see. It wasn't on bags, but to see a car that really you don't see ever in person, and then all of a sudden to see one slammed is kind of like that shock value for me. And that's kind of why I've been so drawn to the Corvair with the roof chop, and body dropped, the 700, and now the Auto Union. All the weird cars you never see ever in person, let alone slammed on the ground. Yeah, I don't know. That one's a difficult one to kind of think off the top of my head for something I'd never seen. There was a Fiat 500, like an original Fiat 500 at Players Classic a few years ago, or a 124 or 125, the real short hatchback Fiat. I don't think it was a 500. I think it was like a 124, 125. And that was on air on little split wheels and like little SSRs or something. And that thing was pretty mind blowing because, you don't see those ever in America. Yeah, that would be tough. I'd have to put more thought into that one to kind of narrow in on an exact car specifically. Joshua, 2 A's and 2 or 3 underscores. So Josh Dresswell has a really, really cool Toyota that he just finished from Japan. It's a GX 61, 71. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Josh. But please go check out Josh's Instagram page. It's Josh WAA with like 2 or 3 underscores. He did build some really cool stuff in England. I think we're cut from the same fabric. His Toyota is super cool. My friend Ben Walker machined a few components for the front end on that car. I think he did like some custom knuckle components or something. He basically body dropped the car on these really rare Japanese wheels, super cool retro wheels. His question is, what's your full UK plans? How long are you over for? So we're over from the 9th to the 18th of August. So I'll be there for the full week before the Roll Hard show. And as of right now, since we'll have wheels over there, my plan is to kind of make my way around to see other people. I'll be staying in Wales with Steve, but I really want to make my way out and just kind of like hang out with some friends. My plan is to bring my podcast gear. I want to have a few friends from the UK on the podcast, but I'm also planning on bringing my bike. So if any of you guys that are BMXers from the UK, Steve rides, my friend Ben Walker rides, my friend Chris Saunders, who's from America, who lives in London now, he rides. We're all going to try to get together and ride, like maybe like one skate park. I mean, I'm going to be making my way across a few different skate parks, but maybe we ride Bristol or something. Hit me up on Instagram if any of you guys that ride want to get together while I'm over there as like an impromptu Ludwig's Garage skate park meet or something. Like I'm totally into trying to set something like that up. So yeah, the 9th to the 18th. Roll Hard's our only actual obligation right now. We've got like a tentative trip plan, I guess, set up. But after Roll Hard, that Monday through Wednesday, really nothing too set up. I think I'm going to be in London on the Wednesday with Chris before we fly home. We'll try to set something up. I know Josh will be at Roll Hard. I can't wait to see the Toyota. That thing's so cool. I've always wanted one as well. I wanted a black one to pair with the Century before I sold the Century. But it'd be good to see everybody that weekend. I think Roll Hard will bring most of my automotive friends together for the weekend. But those are the dates that I'll be there. Loose plans kind of strewn throughout. Would love to do some podcasts with some friends and some skate park stuff and ride BMX as well as the Ludwig's Garage meet the Saturday before the Roll Hard as well. Let's see. Canyon_Watt, W-A-T, says, besides wheels and bags, are you sticking with the same drivetrain on the Auto Union? Yeah, I am. Well, I'd like to. Let's put it that way. I'd like to. As I mentioned in the last episode, that car is powered by a really cool power plant. It's got a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke engine in it. It's front-engined. It's water-cooled without a water pump. So it's got like a thermo-cooling design to it. And it's front-wheel drive with a freewheeling transmission. Since it's 2-stroke, the oil gets into the engine via the gas or the fuel. So when you're deselling down a hill and you're not giving it any fuel, you could burn the motor out because you're not ultimately giving it fuel, which means you're not giving it oil. And so it's got this really crazy freewheeling transmission. So it coasts when you're going downhill, so it doesn't burn the engine up. The motor's really cool. They say that it's only got 7 moving parts. DKW and Auto Union like promoted that it's the most simplistic internal combustion engine ever built because it's only got 7 moving parts. I think that'll make it rebuildable, or it'll make a rebuild easy. I'm not an engine builder by any means. I've never rebuilt an engine myself. And really the only ones I've ever had my hands on are small block Chevys that my dad was rebuilding. So I'm kind of excited to do that. But the problem is I really want the car done for Eurotripper in February. It's mid-July as I'm recording this. And so it gives me about 6 to 8 months to get this car done. And the problem is the cars are so rare. The drivetrains are so rare. They had the DKW Juniors. Those are pretty rare too, but you can find those. And I'd hate to find one that was fully mechanically sound to just rip the drivetrain out to put it in the Auto Union, my Auto Union. I really want to keep that drivetrain in there. So I don't want to just cut the car up and put it on a beetle pan. That would make it easier down the road to get parts for. That would make it much easier. And I actually do have an independent rear ball joint front beetle pan ready to go. It's back home in New Hampshire, but I have a beetle pan that I set aside for a project like this. But as I did mention before, the Auto Union, the 1000 SP is a frame car and the frame is solid. And so I really don't want to like cut so much of that good usable stuff away and throw it away to just put it on a beetle pan if I don't have to. So I'd love to keep it stock powered. And if it takes me longer than expected, or as long as unfortunately expected, to rebuild this 3-cylinder and its drivetrain, and I don't know what the clutch is like. I don't know if the clutch is good. That freewheeling transmission's got to have like some sort of crazy fluid coupler in the bell housing or something to allow you to come to a stop in gear without it stalling. I don't know if any of that is in working order still. What I think my plan will be, and this is kind of shooting from the hip, is to focus on all the suspension work first. I got to do a lot of modifications because I want to body this car on the ground. I want to basically body drop it. So it's got a straight beam in the rear. I think I'm going to have to rebuild that whole, I'm going to have to cut that whole setup. I'm going to have to redesign that whole setup, cut the floor out so the beam can enter the floor to put the car on the ground. The front end's real crazy. It's got a transverse leaf spring stack in the front and the back. It's a really weird setup. So I think my tentative plan right now would be to basically tackle the suspension first. Use the motor and drivetrain that's in the car now as basically mock-up components, so I know how much room I have to my hood. If I have to raise anything to get the car to go on the ground, if I've got to rebuild any control arms or any cross members or anything, like where everything has to mount, and get it like bodied on the ground and air suspension in it, and get that done first maybe, and then tackle, or maybe along the whole way, be tackling the mechanicals, trying to like gather up parts from wherever I need to find those parts all over the world. So on that note, I need to thank my friend Marcelo from Argentina, who's been looking around, trying to find engine components for me. So I've got friends down in South America looking. I've got some friends in Europe and Germany that know I'm looking for parts. I'm hoping that in the coming months, I'll be able to kind of put all that stuff together. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I've been putting it on hold because I want to get the lift in, and I want to be able to use the lift to keep that car, up and down easily. If I've got to separate the frame and like body drop the frame first, I can lift the body. I want to be able to build a rolling like chassis frame for that. So if I need to get another car on the lift, because I want to keep shorter term projects in and out of the shop. I want to keep bringing things in, modifying them and selling them, and helping that fund or have those quick flips or quick projects fund the Auto Union project. So the lift is first, and then I'll be trying to get on the Auto Union full bore. But yeah, as a long-winded answer to that question, yeah, I want to keep it OEM drivetrain because I love how weird that is. A 3-cylinder 2-stroke sounds amazing. If you haven't heard them, definitely YouTube 3-cylinder Auto Unions or DKWs running. They sound like chainsaws on steroids, basically. So that's the overall plan there. I think I might end this episode here. I might do a couple questions. Let's see. My friend Fred White from 1320 Video. It's Fred_1320 Video. Says, let's see. Out of your 100 plus cars you've owned, give me 5 that you wish you could have back and why. So that might be easy. But I don't know if I'd want them. I guess I would want them back. It's a catch-22 for me because those cars were helping me fund the next project. So I mentally got to a place where I justified selling it to then be able to fund the next one. So I don't really miss them enough to want to pursue getting them back because I'd rather that money go towards building another car that I've never built or I've never even seen before, or something that is ticking off another box on like the quote unquote dream car project list. But I guess to name off 5 of the notable cars that were some of my favorites. A car that maybe I learned a lot about, whether or not it was learning more fabrication skills, kind of expanding my versatility in suspension design or welding or becoming more confident in my fabrication skills, for another project, to be like, all right, I'm more willing to, or more confident in diving into this car in a deeper way. I'd say my 1960 Mercedes 220 SB, that was my W111 Fintail. That was the first car I ever bagged. That car was featured in Mercedes Enthusiast magazine in 2013, or it might have come out in 2014. We shot it in 2013. That was a very special car because it was the first car I ever bagged. I'd always wanted a Fintail. The SB was the full chrome package, so it was like the highest option car that you could buy in 1960. It had the high-drac transmission in it, so that was a 4-speed on the column, auto stick, so it had no foot clutch. It basically was Mercedes' version of the auto stick, and it was a very special car. I ended up making a good profit margin on that car for what I had into it. Maybe number 2 would be my E23, my second E23. That was the Cypress Green Euromarket right-hand drive, fully optioned 5-speed manual E23. That was a 735. That was diplomatically owned by the Consul General of Turkey. I ended up finding all of the super rare BBS body kit components for that car. I found parts in Poland. I found parts in London. I found parts in New Hampshire that were Germany, or that were from Germany, essentially. It was a real crazy story. That car ended up being featured in Fast Car magazine, Performance BMW magazine, as well as S3 magazine. I mean, thinking that car may have had 3 magazine features when I got it done is just mind-blowing to me. So that's another one of my closest felt cars, I would say. My Lada that I talked about earlier, my pre-export Soviet 2101. I bought that while I was in England, so I had my hands on that car before I even bought it. It was the first car I shipped to America. I did all the legwork there. I didn't go through like an import company that did everything for me. I was in touch with the U.S. agents. I was in touch with the shipping company, Hill Shipping. Shout out to Jamie Hill for helping me out with that. I got my feet wet in every aspect of importing that car. I bought BBS E76s for that car. I worked with bag riders on both the E23 and the Lada. I did the 3H system in both those cars. So I did the height sensors and everything. That's 3. 4 is definitely the Century. The Century might be at the top because as I'm recording this, I've sold the Century, which is something I knew I might do in the future, but really didn't want to do. That's one of the dream cars. And that was, as you guys may know, the only long wheelbase Century that Toyota ever made. And they only made 430 of them, roundabout 430. Never exported out of Japan. Took me about 8 years or so to find one. Did a coast-to-coast trip in it when I bought it. I bought it sight unseen in Seattle, Washington. Drove it over 3,500 miles home to New Hampshire with a couple friends. S3 magazine ended up featuring that car as well in the same issue that the 7 Series is featured in, basically because I drove that car from New Hampshire to Los Angeles and did a bunch of pop-up meets along the way to sell it. Then from LA, flew to Seattle, bought the Century, again, sight unseen, and then drove that car over 3,000 miles home, doing pop-up meets along the way back. So S3 kind of did a dual feature about the E23 and the Century, but the one trip that they were both, the E23 selling and then the acquisition of the Century. So that was really cool as well. A car that I never thought I would ever get a chance to own, let alone bag and have featured in print. That car was super special to me. So that is number 4. So 5. Oh boy. Number 5. There's a few others that were like real special to me. I mean, I had a right-hand drive Mark 1.5 Volkswagen Derby that I bought off my friend Ross. I did a custom coilovers in that car. The Derby, maybe the Derby. Man, I don't know. I had a first year 190 Mercedes that was a 5-speed manual, OEM manual car that I did air in. The Derby was special. A handful of Mark 1 Rabbits that I kind of miss. I know I'm missing one that I've sold that I wish I had back. The German 2F Polo that I did last year was really fun. I worked with bag riders and Rotiform, built some custom LHR wheels for that car. Maybe the Derby, because I learned a lot on that car too. So the Derby, the Mark 1.5 Derby, was a very short-lived facelift Derby. So I think they only did that car for 1 or 2 years, the Mark 1.5. So they went from metal to plastic bumpers. They went from round to square headlights. They went from the Polo instrument cluster to the Mark 1 Golf instrument cluster, the early Mark 1 Golf cluster. It was right-hand drive. It was a UK market car. I built a custom coilover suspension similar to the coilover suspension conversion I did in my Fox wagon years ago and the 2F Polo I did last year. So basically what I did was I went from the Polo suspension to a Mark 1 Golf suspension. And that involved doing knuckle and spindle swaps, steering alterations. I had to build like steering plates on the strut assemblies. And on the Derby, I had to build custom axles because the inner CV joints were still Polo spline count for the transaxle for the Polo, and the outer CV joints were a larger spline count for the Mark 1 Golf knuckles and spindles, like for the wheel bearing or for the hub, basically, that went into the wheel bearing in the knuckle. And so I'd never built axles before. So with the help of my friend Nick Acton back home in Meredith, New Hampshire, he's got a little machine shop. We cut basically the Polo axles in half and then brand new Mark 1 Rabbit axles in half, and we pinned and doweled them, and then we balanced them on his lathe. So we balanced them ourselves and TIG welded them up. And it was really cool to like put that car together and drive down the road skating, static basically on the ground, and know that you built like everything underneath that car. As far as like, well, not everything, but you know what I mean. Building axles, all the mounts, steering components, custom top hats to mount into the Polo. It was just kind of like a car that I expanded my skill set horizon on. So that car meant quite a bit to me. That might be 5. I could probably think of a few more. Like I had 2 2002s back in 2011. I had a 71 Roundy and I had a 76 square taillight late model. You know, I short money. I paid like $1,200 for those cars and flipped them for like $3,500 and thought I was on top of the world. And those cars are 5-figure cars now all day long. So there's a lot that I kind of regret selling for the monetary value today. But I think those are top 5 that would love to have back, because if buying and selling the cars weren't part of my income, say like my laser business, my laser cutting business, made enough. Like if I had aggressively expanded with the laser business, which I guess isn't outside the realm of possibility, but it's not where my passion lies. Like I love making merchandise. I love making the leather key rings and acrylic and wood components or other bits of merchandise in different mediums. I love that stuff. I really do. But if I had aggressively expanded that business and had employees and more machines and all that, and had like big income and could just build cars and keep them, I would love to have those 5 in a garage all next to each other. For sure. Would love that. So yeah, but I don't really regret selling them, because I mentally got to the space where I was like, all right, selling this car will help me fund the next one. Like this last 67 Mercedes that I just did for Alpine Volkswagen. I mean, that was a one owner Southern California or California owned Survivor car. Had 30,000 miles on it. It was an incredible condition car. Did the Schmidt TH lines on it. Did a quick, build on the air suspension for that car for Alpine Volkswagen. And I wasn't driving it, made me miss having, that was like my 4th or 5th 1960s era Mercedes. And it made me miss owning one for sure, but I don't miss selling it. Like I was happy to sell it. That helped fund the lift, and it helped fund the 24-foot open trailer. I think I'm going to do one more question, because now that I was talking about that, Matt, who actually bought my Century, asked a few questions. And so Matt is from California, so the Century now resides in California. Let me see. He said, favorite car show venue you've attended. Favorite venue? Well, that one's actually kind of easy. My favorite venue car show I've ever attended is Players Classic in England. And that is held at Goodwood Motor Circuit. And I am a massive vintage motorsport nerd. And Goodwood is a famous vintage automotive, motorsport track. And to have the opportunity to not just travel to England for Players Classic, But to be friends with Jay and Carl and Ben and the guys that helped put that show on and get a chance to go up into the VIP room at the grid, basically at the starting line of the racetrack, and to see some of the old posters of like Sterling Moss from the early 50s running at Goodwood. And there's a photo of him coming around like one of the last like chicanes or one of the last corners headed towards the checkered flag. And you can see one of the old like buildings with the Shell livery on the roof, or it just says Shell on the roof. And you look out the window and you're looking at that building and it still says Shell on it. And then you realize like the hallowed ground you're standing on for motorsports. I think that one's the easy one because the show is held on the green behind the VIP box. And then all the paddocks are filled with the cars for the car show. So you're actually walking through the paddocks at the show. And to one up it, in the back of the venue is a vintage like aviation club or something. And all weekend long, you're watching P-51s and Hurricanes, like these V-12 Merlin World War II era fighter planes take off and land. So that's a treat as well. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Yeah, he asked a few other questions, but I don't know if, I think maybe I'll save those for the next episode. Dream 3-Car Garage, he asks as well. Let me plug his Instagram too. It's mag_plethora on Instagram. But he actually started an Instagram page for the Century, and that's called Fetch the Limo. And that's actually the name of the feature that S3 Magazine put out for the Century. So that's kind of cool. If you guys want to see more of that car, that's where that car resides now. All right, I just took a quick break. I could not hold it any longer. So what I want to do is I started rushing through the questions because I had to pee so bad. And I used to try to record these straight through when I had guests on. And it would either be myself or whoever I had on completely dying, holding it so hard to where it's like you're on the verge of passing out. And I quickly realized that there's really no reason to do that. We have the power to stop the podcast and come right back. So I started to rush through the questions only because I had to pee really bad. And then I realized, like, what am I doing? I should go through a few more of these. So when we back up a few questions, Fred White asked a few good questions. And a couple that I just wanted to answer. So like I'm answering them. He wanted to know how long my driveway is. And to be honest, I haven't walked it like to measure it yet. I'd say 100 feet, 150 feet maybe, but it's steep, which is kind of too bad. Cause it's kind of like unusable space. It's not like, I mean, I can drag my enclosed trailer and I can pull a trailer up without dragging the ground. You know, it's not that steep, but, it's long and straight. But at the top, there's really like not too much space up. But the house I'm in now, which is my buddy Andy's house that I'm renting out. His other question he asked was doing any cross-country trips through Omaha anytime soonish. I don't think so. There's not one planned right now, but the E24, my 6 Series, my Euro 6 Series, is out in Walnut Grove at my buddy Sutton's shop. And there's a big project on the burner with that car. And everyone on the Patreon knows what that is. And it's pretty exciting, but it's taking a back burner position, unfortunately. But the plan was to finish that car up and drive that back from California to Chattanooga. And who knows, maybe it would end up on a middle route through the country and back through Omaha. I do want to visit again, man. You and Wes Carty, haven't seen you guys in a while, and would love to come through there. Would love to spend a little bit more time there too. The last time on the Century trip, it was literally, we were holding my pop-up meet from 7 to 9 p.m. at Fred's parents' like arcade, basically. They have like this really cool like adventure place. And we were headed from Billings, Montana. The night prior, we had our pop-up meet in Billings, Montana. And we hit the road at like 4 a.m, forgetting that there was a jump ahead in time. And the trip took so much longer than we expected. I mean, we hammered so hard in that long wheelbase Century. We ultimately arrived 2 hours late to our 2-hour meet. We arrived at like 9 o'clock and everyone was still there. Fred kept the place open. They had pizza. They ordered pizza. It was incredible. It was an awesome, awesome night. Well, anyway, we arrive at 9. We hang out till midnight or 1 in the morning. And then our next meet was the following night in Chicago. So we got on the road at we might have gotten a later start. I think we got on the road at like 7 or 8 because we got up early and met up with Fred and Wes at one of their favorite breakfast spots, which I believe COVID has closed for good, unfortunately. But hopefully coming through Omaha again soon. I know you're out in the middle of nowhere, man. It's so tough to get out there for any reason, especially driving. I'd have to just fly there and be like, hey, I'm here and we're going to spend time here in Omaha, which isn't outside the realm of possibility. But if you find your way to Chattanooga, we've talked about doing a podcast episode for 2 years now. So come to Chattanooga and sit in this really cool booth and we'll talk about your cars, your time with 1320 Video and the places that that has taken you and some of your favorite stuff. So let's do that soon. Because we have done an Instagram live session. That did really well. So maybe worst case scenario, we do something like that again. Let me go back to a couple other questions here. This is a good one. So Jeggy, Jegggy with a couple underscores, says, do you and Kayla have any plans for her 944? Yeah, we do. And I love the fact that she wants to do like cool stuff to that car. I didn't talk about that car here on this episode yet. So to kind of glaze over that, Kayla, my girlfriend, loves cars. I mean, we're like in that same lane. So things work out pretty well for my car obsession and my life basically existing in cars. So she recently bought a first year 1983, first year US market Porsche 944 in a factory Porsche color. It's like a more modern OEM Porsche color. And we bought it off of our friend Elliot, who owns the 944 barn. And back a few episodes ago, you saw us go there for the first time and were blown away by the close to, if not more than 50 944 platform cars he has there, between 944s, 968s, 924s. Pretty incredible spot. Well, we ended up talking and Kayla was really in the market. Both, like, she really wanted another like old car. She drives a Golf Sport Wagon now, but she wanted something old and fun. Always wanted a 944. I've always wanted a 944. And he had one that fit the bill perfectly. It was in the budget. It was in the overall condition that she was looking for. And it's a really cool car. Being an 83, it's a manual steering rack car, which was 83 only. From 84 on, they came with power steering, unless otherwise optioned with a manual rack. So it's a manual rack, manual roof. It's got AC. That still needs to be worked on. There's a lot of aesthetic and mechanical things that we still need to sort out on the car, but it's a runner. It's a turnkey, ready to go. But as far as the things that we want to do to it, she wants to lower it, and I love that. She's like, we got to go down with this thing. So I've never worked on 944s before. Elliot's kind of given me a crash course on their setups. They're coilover front and torsion bar in the rear. So I know some guys pull the torsion bars right out and go full coilover. We might do that in the future, not sure. But for now, we're going to do coilovers up front and go down a click or two in the rear on the torsion bars to close all that wheel gap up. And she's already test fitting some wheels. Our friend Mason here in town has a set of wheels that we test fit the other day that she might pull the trigger on. That'll look pretty cool. I'm not going to give that away yet. That's going to be up to her. But it's been fun to kind of add some of that content to the YouTube channel as well, since it's a car that I'll be working on, but it's an early 944, so it's really cool. So that's kind of in the plans. We're going to do suspension and wheels next, as well as like some maintenance and, maybe try to do Euro bumpers and some other aesthetic things to kind of make the car look a little bit more Euro, a little bit more bespoke, really. All right, let's do a couple more before we close this thing out. Marco_Rothfuzz says, what does your dad think of your style of cars since he's an old school car guy? So he actually really likes it. And I talk about this with my friends a lot because he's a late 60s General Motors muscle car guy. Like he likes it all. Like he loves Mach 1 Boss Mustangs. But the stuff that he's owned before I was born through my childhood, have all been 60s GM muscle. He bought and sold a lot of C1 and C2 Corvettes before I was born, which, he wishes he capped because obviously today they're worth a ton of money, but they're also pleasurable cars to have. He had late 60s Novas. He had a 69 SS 396 Chevelle. He had a 69 or 70 Camaro. Can't remember if it was a first or second gen. He did have a second gen Z28 Camaro. So he likes all that stuff. But he raced a Mark I Rabbit when I was a kid. He raced at Circle Track. And that was kind of where I got my first exposure to Volkswagens. So basically, I don't know where I took like this weird left turn into like all these weird cars, the 700, the Auto Union, even the Derby, the Corvair, chopping the roof on the Corvair. Like I like all this weird stuff, but I love the fact that he loves that. Him and I built the 700 and the Corvair together, and he never skipped a beat on the 700. It was never like, oh, this thing's like too weird. Like you're never gonna like what is this? He was always down every second. So it's been really cool to like, it's kind of surprising to me. It was surprising at first to be like, wow, he's actually like into working on these cars with me when I'm like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? And he'll know that I'm looking at some weird car in Vermont or something. And he's like, all right, like, what is it? So that's been pretty cool that now that I'm, into my mid 30s, that he's like really into the weird stuff that I'm into, taking him for a drive in the Century, put him in the back seat, and he was like surrounded by all this crazy Japanese luxury. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that we can like share that. Let me see, maybe one more, two more. Well, he actually asked another question. He says, when does your dad come on the podcast? So actually, while he was here a month ago or so to pick up a new truck that he bought down here and drive it back to New Hampshire, I actually talked to him about possibly sitting down on the podcast. It'd be a crazy dynamic for me personally, and I'm sure for him, because this is like nothing he's ever done before. To like almost, it feels interview-ish, even though to just be him and I talking, but it'd be me like cultivating conversation about some of these crazy stories he has from when he was a kid, or from when he was racing, or when he was starting his business and building cars. I know that's a weird dynamic because although I consider him one of my best friends, he's still my dad. So it's just kind of a weird dynamic. And I feel like I'm there. I feel like I can get into that headspace to like have a normal conversation with the microphones and the camera, and hopefully he could too. So I was really kind of bummed that I didn't really take the time to get him on the podcast while he was here. I'm sure I'll be back to New Hampshire before he's back here. So hopefully that's when I've got my podcast gear with me. So, I mean, it'd be great to have him here in this studio, but it's something I would love to do soon, hopefully, because I think I know he's got a lot of really cool stories that I think a lot of people will love to hear. So I think that might be it on the questions. I think we covered a handful of them. Mason Gavin asked, TGC plans for the future. That's the Governor's Club. That's an automotive brand that I started back in 2011. He says, maybe we start hosting small themed TGC pop-up meets. So I love that. And maybe we'll end on this note that with the rebranding of my laser engraving business into LUDWICK'S Garage at the beginning of 2021, I think it was the beginning of last year, my laser engraving business was called Night Laser, and I never really did anything with it. It brought in day-to-day business, which was great, but it was just one more thing that like was its own entity. And then the Governor's Club was all the automotive brand stuff, but it was mostly like pop-up meets, shirts, merchandise. Not really a club, but kind of spread its wings worldwide. I've met people from all over the world through the Governor's Club who have run stickers on their cars or put the handle in their About Me on Instagram or their bio. Pretty wild stuff. But then when I took Night Laser and kind of like phased it into LUDWICK'S Garage, and that was kind of like carrying the torch from my father's business, Ludwig Service Center, which was his garage and automotive business. And so Ludwig's Garage is what you're partaking in now. It's the podcast, it's the laser engraving business, it's the cars, it's all my projects, and notably the YouTube channel. That Ludwig's Garage is all of my projects, my automotive projects on the YouTube channel. But also the merchandise that comes from that, the shirts, the merchandise drops, the hats, all the hard goods that I make myself. That's been taking the front seat, front burner. And boy, oh boy, does that take up all the bandwidth. So I've let the Governors Club totally slip by the wayside. Like I've not done much with that at all. I haven't posted anything on the Instagram in months. And that's an organic following. That's right around like 20,000 followers on Instagram. And that's, when I think about it now, because I look at Ludwig's Garage as more of a business, because that's where I make my money. And that's through the cars and the laser engraving stuff. The Governors Club was always just like, it's friends and it's fun. We'll make some merchandise, whatever merchandise or whatever money that merchandise makes, I'll put it into more. And to see that growth organically through something that for me was just fun. It was nothing that I ever wanted to push too aggressively to make it feel not fun or not about fun. So the fact that I've not had the time or taken the time to really focus on that really kind of bums me out. So I'm glad that Mason has kind of thought about that. But also, I do have a sense of anything that I put my efforts into, I want to have the Ludwig's Garage name and brand on. So if I was going to be doing pop-up meets, I'd love to have like LG on that. But as far as here in Chattanooga, I mean, I love that he's motivated about that kind of stuff. Mason puts on the Riverside show, as I mentioned earlier. So it'd be really cool to do some Governors Club, Riverside, or just Governors Club pop-up meets here in Chattanooga. It just takes time. It's all time. That's why I wish I had a team of people, like a team of people that surrounded me that could be legit, that I could like have on the books and like actually like pay to like do a lot of this stuff, to be like, hey, we got a pop-up meet this date, and helping me film. And that way when I'm at pop-up meets, I love socializing with my friends and talking with them and stuff. But then I realized, I got to be filming this, because it'd be awesome to have like a YouTube episode of this hangout and this pop-up meet. And then like I'm running around with a camera, but I'm not talking with people. And so it'd be great to have like a filmer someday to like just, and be like someone who does that, who understands the whole world of filming and whatnot, and have their own gear and stuff. So yeah, maybe some TGC stuff soon. I know some people have been asking, and everyone who asks, thank you. It's motivational. I mean, I want to do more Governors Club merchandise drops, need to do more shirts, more stickers and stuff like that. So stay motivated. If I end this podcast on any note, like, make use of your time. Like, we all need relaxation. Lord knows I need it. The only reason why I haven't done this is because I've been go. And I mean, I end up like passing out on my computer while editing YouTube episodes late at night. And it's hard when you don't see any growth. Like when that growth is so minimal, you're like, I'm putting so much work into this. Will this go anywhere? And I'm telling you right now, I'm on a wing and a prayer with this, because I'm 37 years old now. I spent my 20s riding BMX professionally, had other people filming me as I rode. You know, I never focused on a YouTube channel or anything like that, which I should have. I should have started that and planted that seed way earlier. So the way I see it is, man, it'd be amazing to share the stuff that I love doing and the journey of me learning more about cars and building weirder and weirder cars throughout the years, and have that ultimately, hopefully, become a career. And man, is the workload serious. To try to make any sort of living creating YouTube videos is a world that I knew it was hard work. I knew it was a slow burn, that it was like the hardest to grow social media platform to like make money from or whatever. But man, oh man, the work you put in is not equal to the ROI, basically, at least as far in as I've gotten. That is for sure. So it just takes up so much work. I mean, and it's a goal. I've written it down. I'm like, let's do it. I've invested in the gear. I've invested in my time. I've started projects just for YouTube content. The 2F Polo, the Mercedes you guys just saw, the W108, all of those projects are simply for YouTube content. I still haven't sold the Dodge Diplomat yet. You know, that's that $30,000, the 30,000 mile Dodge Diplomat I have. I've been trying to sell it and it hasn't sold. And I keep taking that as a sign. I'm like, all right, do I use that as YouTube content and lower that car? Like build suspension and do wheels. And Lord knows that car would look amazing lowered on the ground. But it's a difficult suspension to work with and it's going to be time consuming. And so anyway, stay motivated, guys. If you've got a side hustle or you're dreaming of like a new career or something, the time is now. Other than like nesting away your money to financially have the upper hand in that jump, like you be calculated. I kind of threw myself into this whole thing after I'd been laid off from a job and bought the laser machine, having no idea how to use it. And I just kind of threw myself into this world, not financially ready and not mentally ready either. So I feel like I'm still playing catch up 7 years in. So, but the time is now. We have an hourglass. It's been tipped and it ain't stopping. Like we're just going to keep getting older. Opportunities might continue to pass us by. Don't live with regret. If you've got an opportunity and you think it might be a good thing, I mean, you won't win at anything unless you fail at things. At least I think. I don't know if anyone's got a streak of nothing but wins. So the things you fail at, I mean, I heard, I'll leave with this because I was watching a documentary, a Jim Carrey's documentary of the making of Man on the Moon. And it was him playing Andy Kaufman. And he had a documentary crew follow him around while he made the film. I think it was in like 1999 or something like that. But in the documentary, he says something that's so profound. And it was him talking about him growing up and pursuing his dreams and having nothing, basically. And basically he said, and this won't be verbatim, but he said, I realized you can fail at the things you don't love. So why not try the things you do love? And I think he followed up with that with, there's really no other option. And I think that's incredibly profound because if you can fail at something you don't love, some 9 to 5, some job you hate, or whatever, if you can fail at something you don't love, by goodness gracious, fail at something you love. Take that leap of faith, just jump. And if you fail doing something you love, I mean, it's that much easier to pick the pieces up and just keep going. Cause I feel like those failures, you learn through failure. And I'm trying to do that myself. I mean, I feel like there's so many shortcomings that I have, so many things that don't work out and you have to navigate through this maze or this minefield of life and opportunities and whatnot. So I'll leave with that. Yeah. Focus on things you love and take plunges. The hourglass is falling or ticking away, I should say. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to try to do more of these. I know this one's a little bit longer, but I really want to do like 20 or 30 minute ones a week if it's me solo. I know the 2.5 hour ones are fun listens. I love listening to 3 hour podcasts because I'll be in the shop and I'll just have podcasts on, whether or not they're true crime or they're history or whatever. There's a handful of podcasts I like listening to, and I like the 2 or 3 hour long ones because I can just have them playing throughout the day. So I still want to do those with friends and guests and whatnot, and focus on more people and more, other people's livelihoods and careers that they do. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you again to all of you guys on the Patreon. Hope that continues to grow, and I would love to start doing Patreon exclusive streams of some sort, podcast shorts or something like that, to stay in touch with you guys in more of an interactive way than just making posts about what's going on and whatnot. So Instagram is john.ludwick, and Ludwick's Garage, the Governor's Club, since we touched on that, and the Rising Sea on Instagram as well, since we touched on that too. That's it. Over and out, guys. Thank you for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, the links to all of those are in the video's description below. I try to squeeze them into the Spotify descriptions as well. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening.